Sometimes it's good to check up on your friends. You might not have seen them in a while, and they might not be your most recent pals, but it's good to check up on them nonetheless. Today, we're checking up on the Mazda CX-30. It's been a while since it launched, and we really liked it when it first arrived, so of course, we have some great memories together. But the question is, are we better off spending our time with one of these, or one of its more recently launched rivals? Well, that's what we're going to find out. The CX-30 we have for this review is the top-spec G25 Astina. It has the larger of two engine choices and the option of all-wheel drive too, although the one we're specifically testing here is front-wheel drive. I remember when the CX-30 first came out and some of us were surprised by the pricing. At the time it was pretty far from a cheap small SUV, but things have changed a lot since then and prices have risen across the board and now to the point where the CX-30 seems like compelling value. The more recently launched Corolla Cross and Honda HR-V, to use two examples, are more expensive like for like, with even popular once value-oriented rivals like the Kia Seltos now having risen to almost parity with the Mazda. The CX-30 doesn't just look impressive though, it has great equipment too, including an 8.8-inch multimedia touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, built-in sat-nav, a 7-inch digital instrument panel, dual-zone climate control, particularly nice leather interior trim, heated front seats, LED headlights, a sunroof, and a 360-degree parking camera. Check out the full list of gear at carsguide.com.au, but suffice to say that this Mazda looks after its friends. There are a handful of odd omissions for a high-spec car though, particularly one which costs this much. For a start, there's no wireless charger and no wireless phone mirroring either. And while the full set of safety gear is also on show here, it's worth considering the fact that there's no true hybrid option in the CX-30 range. While the Haval Jolion looks like the kind of friend happy to hit up the McDonald's drive-thru, and the Corolla Cross Hybrid is, of course, happy to eat at home to save a few bucks, and to be honest, it's dressed like it too, the CX-30 is dressed to impress, looking like it should be seen at the valet stand of your local Michelin star restaurant. A few years of age or not, the design on this car is still spectacular, placing it right at the forefront of the mainstream small SUV segment. The delicate panelwork, signature grille, big wheels at this Astina grade, and paired back light fittings all look as though they should be competing in a price bracket above, and the interior meets expectations too. It's one thing to look premium and it's quite another for a car to actually feel premium. A lot of brands try this, but I feel like Mazda really gets it right. I feel like I'm sitting in an interior which is almost Lexus quality in terms of its look and its feel. You've got a nice soft touch kind of leather finish on the steering wheel, same sort of finishes on the dash here. There's even areas where it doesn't need to be soft touch, like up on the top of the dash here. It just adds that extra veneer of kind of quality to the cabin, and the fit and finish is excellent too. There's little touches of chrome as well, but not too much that it's going to dazzle you in your eyes. Some people might appreciate the fact that the screens are a little bit more low-key than they are in other automakers that do the big panels that sort of jump out at you and they're really full on and all the controls are moved in there. The Mazda screens in here are just, they're inlaid, they're set back, they're part of the design, not the dominating feature of it. And a real highlight for me are these seats as well. They really feel like they've been dropped out of a car that's much more expensive. This screen here isn't a touchscreen. Instead, it has to all be controlled through this center dial here. And that's all well and good when you're using Mazda's built-in software, which is set up for such an interface. But when you're using phone mirroring software like Apple CarPlay, it's a total pain in the ass, and it really takes away from your concentration while you're driving because you just have to scroll through every single menu to get to the one you want, let alone enter anything into like a navigation field or something. It's worth keeping in mind. Now, it was really easy for me to find a seating position in this car that I was comfortable with. The steering has both reach and tilt adjust. You've got all sorts of controls for the seating as well. And what I ended up with was almost a hatch-like seating position, so you're kind of cozy, comfy, and ready to go on the road. I love that about it. Now, storage, you've got a large bottle holder in the door there with a pocket as well. There's two more in this little flip-out set here, but interestingly there's kind of an awkward bay in front of here that's just a plastic finish. It's almost begging to have a wireless charger in there or a shelf or something. It's just sort of a blank panel which takes away from the design a bit, at least I think anyway. And then you've got here this nice armrest console box that has a soft finish. I love that, but it has a weird kind of sliding and then tilting mechanism, and when you're driving like this you can't rest your arm on it. It's too far away. That's an interesting little flaw I found, but the space in there is quite good. And there's also your charging ports in there for your phone and your connectivity. And that's good because it kind of is all hidden away once you've closed it all up. Okay, so I'm behind my own seating position here in the CX-30, and the premium theme sort of continues in here, although it's not all rainbows. For example, behind my own seating position here, I've got kind of just enough knee room. Headroom though is probably the most limiting factor, especially with that sunroof in there. I just feel like I'm pretty close here. The seats, well, they've still got that nice trim on them, although the soft trim on the doors doesn't all continue. This is a hard plastic up here, but you do get a soft armrest. That's nice. There's 2 adjustable air vents, but no power outlets, which is a bit of a bummer. And in the door here, you get a surprisingly large bottle holder, which will hold that large bottle. And in here, you get 2 more as well. Not too bad. The boot is 317 litres, which is really not huge, and speaks to an issue with the CX-30's coupe-like design. It's fine for weekend trips for a couple, but it's less good if you're a family on the move and you need to take a pram with you. Under the floor is a tidily packaged space-saver spare wheel and part of the Bose sound system. And here's another issue we have with Mazda's range. This is a 2.5 litre 4-cylinder non-turbo engine, and it just seems a little bit, well, old school. There's no electric motors or anything going on here. And while some drivers might like the fact that it's a big old engine paired to a 6-speed traditional automatic transmission instead of like a CVT or a dual clutch or anything like that, the issue here is, well, there's nothing to mitigate your carbon emissions. So for the more eco-conscious buyer, maybe this won't be the engine for you. In fact, this engine is only compliant with Euro 5 emissions regulations. Power figures are pretty good though. Check those out on your screen, with the CX-30 at least keeping pace or even outpunching some of its turbocharged rivals. But is it nice to drive? And more importantly, will it punish you at the fuel pump? Well, let's take it for a spin and find out. Straight away, it's really easy to connect with the CX-30. Yes, its engine and transmission might not be the most fresh on the market, but they're predictable, easy to live with, and very familiar for those coming out of an older vehicle to drive. The touch points continue to feel fantastic once you're on the road, with the steering feeling nice and light at low speeds, and then it tightens up at higher speeds, giving this car that reactive feel that Mazda has become known for. The CX-30 feels light and springy and agile, and while not everyone will appreciate the firm edge to the ride, it does feel confident in the corners. And again, when you're driving this car purposefully, you can really feel that Mazda 3 DNA in here. And that's something that its cheaper rivals really can't match, that kind of dynamism on the road. This is a properly good small SUV to drive. One thing you certainly don't need to worry about is that 6-speed transmission. It's really predictable, smooth shifting, although it is a little on the old school side. It just sort of rides through those ratios and then predictably switches through them. But for a lot of drivers who are coming out of particularly older cars, it will be really familiar. And there's nothing kind of glitchy about it or rubbery about it like there might be for a CVT or a dual clutch auto. It just keeps things simple. When it comes to ergonomics, everything is pretty straightforward too. The seat holds you in the corners, the wheel is really nice, everything's adjustable, and most things are within reach as well, with the exception being that weird dial for the multimedia system, which makes it a little clumsy to use while you're trying to concentrate. Overall then, the CX-30 is familiar, it's predictable, and most importantly, it's got fantastic handling, which really lives up to that Mazda brand promise. Aside from a few blemishes then, it really is one of the best mainstream small SUVs to drive. Just don't expect it to be particularly high tech. Now, some bad news might come at the fuel pump though, because this is a big engine and this is kind of an old school transmission. Mazda says you'll get 6.8 litres to 100 kilometres, which I thought was quite bold, but I'm surprised to see that that's roughly what I'm getting here on test as well. And I've had this car doing mainly urban duties. I was expecting more like 8 litres to 100, but you'll still need a crispy $100 note to fill this car's tank. Mercifully, the lack of complexity here means you can fill the Mazda with entry-level 91 unleaded. And we've found in the past that unlike hybrids, these engines do perform better on the open road, which is worth considering if you're frequently doing stints on the freeway. I'm glad to see that this car is great to drive, but also the safety tech doesn't interfere. It does have lane keep tech, it does have driver monitoring tech, but it doesn't get in the way of the otherwise smooth drive experience. For more on the full set of safety gear, check out our full review on carsguide.com.au, but the CX-30 comes with all the key tech like auto emergency braking, lane keep tech, rear cross traffic alert, and 7 airbags. It scored particularly highly across all of ANCAP's testing criteria with an impressive 99% in adult occupant protection, and that was back in 2020. Now, Mazda's ownership promise is pretty straightforward. You get 5 years of warranty, 5 years of roadside assist, and, well, you guessed it, 5 years of cap price servicing too. Service pricing is pretty tame too, with the current average for our G25 Astina working out at about $360 a year. You'll need to visit the workshop once every 12 months or 10,000 Ks, whichever occurs first. I'm glad we checked in on our old friend, the Mazda CX-30. Despite being a car that has 2 wheels planted in the future and 2 firmly planted in the past, it's still a car which can hold the line against its rivals, both those that are cheaper and those that are higher tech. And that's because what you see really is what you get with this car. It looks great, it feels great to drive, and it really punches above its weight when it comes to cabin ambience. While what's under the bonnet might not be trendy anymore, driving this car has really reinforced to me again that it is small SUV royalty.